not only is the engine deal important and the drone deal important and all the other acquisitions that have already happened, but I personally would love to see 100 American F-15s or F-16s or F-35s flying in the Indian inventory. It would enhance India's strategic deterrence so much. It would enhance our interoperability. It would address the trade deficit. It would bring our countries closer together, enhance trust between our countries, and it's one of the recommendations in the document. So look, there's plenty of opportunity here. This is where Washington and Delhi have to have clear conversations. I'm delighted Ambassador Jaishankar, or Foreign Minister Jaishankar, is in Washington today for a Quad summit. That is a very strong signal of continuity on the strategic front that we are having a Quad summit on day one of the Trump administration. It sends a strong message to the Indo-Pacific, and that is a basis on which we can continue to build over 25 years of strategic, economic, and technological convergence.
Ambassador Sandhu, let me put that same question to you. Were there moments, Ambassador Keshav was being the diplomat that he is. My question was quite specific. Were there moments in building this relationship where you felt that, no, it was just not going to happen, the differences with America were too strong?
I think in all honesty, Ambassador Keshav and I have been involved with this relationship for more than 25 years now. And we have the advantage of sitting today and looking back. And if we look that way, I think we are in a much more secure, and as Atul just mentioned, that there is what is the foundation of confidence today. So one has to be, in the sense, you have to measure it against what it was earlier. And therefore, we have moved a lot. And just as he has said, the very fact that one of the first actions of the new Secretary of State is going to be the Quad Summit speaks volumes. But this doesn't mean that there is not much to be done, as I'm sure Atul's report has highlighted a lot. But the point being that there is a solid future for both the countries together. And in a climate where international situation is rather difficult, and the friendship, the partnership, I would say, between United States and India would certainly play a long way. And in that, strategic side is there, energy is there, technology is there, education and knowledge partnership is there. You can touch any one of them. But of course, today is a good day. You are having a new president sworn in. Actually, President Trump is not new to India, because we have seen in the 45th presidency, and I personally recall with fondness, and Atul was part of the government then, when he visited India in 2020 February. So therefore, I'm sure I'm reflecting our both confidence that this relationship is bound to deepen. And I'm sure it will cover a lot of areas which you have also touched upon, and the USIBC report mentions.
All right, well, let me just go across now, and I'm joined by Clifford Young and Jonah Blank and Puneet Ahluwalia. Thank you all very much for being with us. Puneet, let me come to you first. Is this, with the Trump presidency, going to be part of a fundamental reset in terms of the values in America? What we've associated with the Democrats is going to change fundamentally. There are going to be changes in terms of the attitude to immigrants. There are going to be changes to people on the issue of, potentially on the issue of abortion as well. There are going to be changes in other respects. Do you feel that this is America entering a cultural reset?
Well, you're looking at a revolution of common sense, as President Trump has said. So I think we're looking at changes in all facets, a reset, looking at the DE, the wokeism, the transgender issues, which is in sports, more importantly, immigration, the rule of law, that has to be initiated, energy independence, economic upswing, reassessing our partnership with China, Mexico, and Canada, and other nations. So I believe, and I'm very optimistic, President Trump is going to go on a forward and do what needs to be done to set America in the trajectory of growth and vitality. So very positive, very optimistic. And we can see the Trump effect all over Washington, D.C. and the rest of the nation as they're celebrating his inauguration. So yes, there is going to be a reset, and a common sense revolution is on its way.
Jonah Blank, in terms of Trump's picks for some of the key posts, how do you see that going? And a lot of the individuals that he's picked are, successful at one level, controversial at another level, none more than perhaps Elon Musk. How do you see the role of Elon Musk in the next administration going?
Well, that's going to be a huge question because you have the world's richest human being explicitly committed to the most radical political program we've seen in the US in generations. He's already said that he will fund primary challenges to any Republicans who oppose Mr. Trump's appointments. And we've already seen that happen. Senator Joni Ernst, who had the ability to block Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, switched her position after a real threat to primary her. We're going to see a lot more of this. And Elon Musk, to be clear, is not in the U.S. government and is not going to enter U.S. government, but he right now has more influence over U.S. government than really possibly anyone other than the president himself.
Clifford Young, your thoughts on what some of the American leaders are going to shape up to do potentially? We've got Kash Patel, for example, who's going to have a huge role in the cleanup process. Give us your sense of what the new administration is going to prioritize. Jonah, can you hear me?
I
sorry,
can.
Clifford, can you hear me? Yeah, so no, just your sense of the new administration, the leaders shaping up. Could you give us a sense of what you think or how you think that's going to look like? All right, we'll try and fix that line in just a little while from now. Let me go across to Puneet Ahluwalia, who's been watching very, very closely. I'll take that same question across to you. In terms of Trump's picks for some of the top posts, what do they bring to the table?
If you see, it's a diverse group of people he has brought on, from the Democrats to people who have been on his side, and also engaging with the multifacets, people with expertise. So I think he's brought the best team in town who's going to do what is needed to energize the economy and, most importantly, implement his vision. Because mind you, he's only got 4 years to really have this tectonic shift that he's envisioned for America. And I believe he's going to do that. At the same time, the weaponization of the DOJ, that's the reason Kash is there to fix that. And we have Marco Rubio, exceptional Secretary of State choice, who knows what the challenges on the international field is because he served on the Senate committees. So I think, and of course, RFK Jr., a Democrat, lifelong Democrat with a legacy of the Kennedys, I think he's brought a great team in place, and I feel very strong. And the other thing which I heard earlier in your conversation, Washington changes every 2 or 4 years. We cannot just sit on the laurels of a relationship that's built. You have to work on it on a daily basis because we have members of Congress who are coming in and the ones who are going out. There's always influencers. The winds are blowing from different sides and they change. And that's the reason it's so important to be engaged all the time. You just can't sit on a relationship. And that relationship needs a lot of hard work, a commitment that needs to be done, from allies to friendships to partners. These are all different terminologies in Washington. And then we look at who's really going to sit on that side when we need your help or you need our help, we're there for you. And that's how President Trump is going to look at the bottom line. And that's why you see so many CEOs who had not participated in his first election are all lining up and supporting President Trump because they see where the wind is blowing. And most importantly, there's hardly any pushback against President Trump because there's a big kumbaya here going on because they saw the support President Trump got from the American people, just not from the patriots, who I call the Republicans or the conservatives, but also the Hispanics, the blacks, the single mothers, the women vote, the kids and the children. You know, we had a diversity of people who came out and supported President Trump. So it's a phenomenal win here, and a Trump effect is all over Washington and America.
All right, let me go back to Clifford Young. He can hear us now. I just wanted to, you know, as we bring in these live images from Washington, D.C., we can see, you know, it's many of the people we were talking about earlier on the program on your screens at this stage. But Clifford Young, let me just talk about some of the key issues that is on Trump's agenda. Mass deportations. How do you see this playing out?
Well, we've just come out of the field with polling. We've been tracking this over the last months, and there is broad-based support for deportation, especially illegal immigrants. Trump and the Trump administration will find support there.
Yes.
But it's important to emphasize or make the caveat that support isn't absolute, right? Americans don't support it in every case, in every instance. If you break up families, if it hurts the economy, that's when it begins to sort of weaken. But when it comes to the policy writ large, there's a lot of support, a lot of frustration in America for having illegal immigrants here. They're not seen as going to the benefit of America as a whole.
Well, the images that you see on your screen do tell a story. We've got Barack Obama walking in and no Michelle Obama there with him, at least. We haven't seen her as yet. We've seen President Bush earlier on as well. The swearing-in ceremony is going to be beginning in a little while from now. We've seen many of the top American leaders arriving at Capitol Hill. So it's going to be very, very interesting in the next 1 hour of this Trump takeover. Let me just quickly go back to Jonah Blank. Let's talk about some of the other key issues. One of them has been restricting birthright citizenship. Trump has sought to restrict who is eligible for U.S. citizenship. U.S. citizenship is one of the most sought-after citizenships anywhere in the world. Do you expect that to be a policy priority of his?
Yes, he's already said so. He's already said that he's going to have this as a day one executive order. Now, let's remember, he has no power to do this. Under the U.S. Constitution, any person who is born in the United States and who is not the child of a diplomat is a U.S. citizen. But he can still order his officials to deport people and let the courts figure it out later. He did that in his first term. We all remember the kids in cages. We all remember the separated families. He's explicitly said he's going to do the same thing right now for families whose children are American citizens, and he's just going to ignore that. Let's remember that he has a mandate for none of this. He has the narrowest popular vote margin of any president in a quarter century. And people were not voting for putting kids in cages or throwing out American citizens. They voted for bringing the price of groceries down, which Trump has already admitted he's not going to do. They voted on the basis of inflation, which every democracy has suffered since the COVID epidemic. And most countries that have had elections, the incumbent power has lost. In India, even a very popular prime minister, Narendra Modi, lost his majority and has to rely on a coalition now. So this program that he's going to put in this afternoon is not what the American people voted for at all.
Jonah, stop scaring people, please. That's
all right, well,
he's not even taking the oath.
Fair enough. The Modi government, by the way, is quite strong as it is in India. But be that as it may, Puneet had a point to make. Go ahead.
Well, Jonah, he's not even taken
the point there,
oath yet. Is it me or the gentleman next
Puneet,
to me
go ahead.
On the screen? Well,
Go for it.
President Trump hasn't even taken the oath. And we are trying to strike fear in people. Most importantly, yes, immigration was a big, huge issue. Rule of law was a big concern. for Americans. That's the reason why President Trump, in one of the executive orders, is sending folks down the border to ensure that our nation is safe. We have almost 70 to 80,000 people who we don't know are in our country. What's their without any background check. So there's a major concern on our safety and security, just not of Americans, but the people who are here from all over the world. So it's important to fix that issue. At the same time, on the energy independence, inflation, he's a business person. He has put a team together, and he has the mandate. For some reason, Jonah doesn't seem to realize that. So I think what President Trump has heard what the American people want, and is going to implement that aspect of doing what needs to be done, which the Biden administration completely failed on doing it. So we need to control the cartels. We need to find ways to ensure there's peace around the world. And that's the reason why we have peace in the Middle East today, or working towards peace. We'll surely find a way to have peace with Russia in Ukraine, because that's another important facet. China is another important concern in South China Sea. And that's the reason why President Trump wants to take a visit to China in the first year. So we're looking at most positive things in process, and Jonah's striking fear in all of us for no reason.
Well, I will give Jonah the opportunity to respond, but I just, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just add on the polling side that on the birthright citizenship, only a minority of Americans are in support of overturning it, something like 40%. Strong support with the Republican base. You got a majority of Republicans in favor of it. That's a weaker point when it comes to immigration. Again, going back to my initial point, there's broad-based support for deporting illegal immigrants who are criminals. 2/3 of Americans agree with that specific point. So there is support there that isn't just the Republican base. There are Democrats that support that. There are independents, but it's a very fragile support, because when you start separating families, you begin to sort of affect the economy. Americans lose their bluster for that specific policy. So on the one hand, broad-based support generally in specific cases, but there's some caveats there.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. Let's just go back to the images from Capitol Hill. We can see several former presidents arriving over there. The Trump swearing in, it's all happening now. He will be sworn in a little more than half an hour from now. For the moment, it's time for us to take a short break, but we've got a very interesting guest with us. Up next, we've got Ian Bremmer, the political analyst. What does he think about what's going to happen next in the United States? Find out after this quick break.
Hello, Moto.
All set for Trump 2.0. Countdown to January 20th. Terror shadow, visa wars. All the twists and turns. Tracking Trump takeover. Every day at 10:30 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.
Kind attention, please. Delhi Election Metro 2025 is arriving on People's Platform.
Please mind the gap. BJP or AAP, who will get to the Delhi Secretariat station?
दरवाजे बाईं तरफ खुलेंगे.
Who will Delhi voters open the victory doors for? And who will be shown the door? Can the BJP throw AAP's victory run off track? Or will it be Kejriwal's ticket to win again? Can Congress take the election metro to revival? We will track it all for you. Delhi's decision destination.
Doors will open on the left.
Stay tuned to NDTV for mega metro poll coverage.
Well, I'm in Altadena. This is one of the worst hit areas. When disaster strikes, NDTV World brings you exclusive on-the-ground reports straight from the heart of the action.
A neighborhood in Los Angeles that has been devastated by fire.
I just received an emergency alert extreme, which has come on my phone. Stay tuned for NDTV World's in-depth coverage as we bring you the real stories from Los Angeles. This is the Altadena area, and there are still fires, and there's a lot of smoke in the area. These houses completely gutted. This is reporting that matters only on NDTV World.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
Hello and welcome to the best of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
For 2 decades, NDTV has been a window to the world's greatest thinkers, leaders, Nobel laureates and stars at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
From Bill Gates to Shakira to Randy Zuckerberg to top ministers to what is often the biggest story, India, a global economic powerhouse. Conversations around our greatest challenges, from AI to wars to sustainability. Join us. NDTV's
what the next presidency of the United States might be like. Donald Trump coming into power for the second time. Ian Bremmer, thank you very much for being with us.
Sure.
The next couple of years are going to be very interesting. Let's go through some of the key points. Firstly, Trump has spoken about mass deportations. Do you expect that to be top of his priority list?
Very close, and especially in these early days before you have the confirmed appointees actually around him in the White House. That means the people that are closest are going to be his senior advisors. They're very interested in moving this aggressively. I could easily imagine 1 million deportations in the first year. And I also think that that reality will put a chilling effect on the decision processes of people that are in the United States, people that are thinking of coming to the United States. So clearly the numbers are going to be significant.
Tariffs is another issue which is important. It affects us in India as well. Do you expect him to take a hardline position on tariffs?
Yes, though the numbers are not going to be the campaign headline. You're not going to have 60% tariffs on all Chinese exports. But in the early days, first weeks or even days, I expect you'll see the initial imposition of new meaningful tariffs on China. You'll see an effort to put more pressure on a bunch of allies for individual tariffs as well. In other words, I don't think the markets have priced this inadequately yet. That's my view.
India is a close strategic partner. The strategic relationship has been pretty even from across administrations.
Right.
Do you expect that trend to continue? Tariffs could be an issue.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the pressure is going to be on the technology side. Trump is going to demand a closer relationship, more alignment from the Indians on tech. I think that's something that Prime Minister Modi is broadly disposed to do.
Yep.
Anyway, the big challenge for India is going to be about the U.S.-China relationship. It's the fact that the U.S.-China relationship is going to get worse. There's going to be decoupling. There's going to be more confrontation, maybe even a trade war. And India is going to have a harder time navigating that in the next year than they had under the last four with Biden. Also on Russia.
Go ahead.
There's going to be more sanctions on Russia that are going to hit India's trade with Russia as we get closer to a negotiation. Right?
Do you expect the oil sale from Russia to India being potentially impacted?
To be further impacted. And I think that because it is going to be hard for Trump to get Putin over the finish line, India's relationship is going to be under more pressure, definitely.
Getting Putin over the finish line, what needs to be done? Do you expect the Ukraine war to end in a finite period of time?
No, I don't expect it to end in the near term, but I do think that later this year, we will probably get a ceasefire. Now, Trump has on many occasions said it's very easy to do. It'll just take a day, 24 hours, he can end the war. He sometimes exaggerates. This is one of those sometimes. It's going to take months to even get negotiations started. I do think that Trump is very willing to talk with Putin directly. Biden had not been. That will obviously facilitate things. He's also assertively asked for China to get involved. That was a topic of conversation between Trump and Xi Jinping in the last few days. That will help if it happens. But we are not close to a ceasefire yet. Even when a ceasefire happens, that's very different from ending the war.
Two more questions. TikTok.
Yeah.
Trump says that perhaps it needs to be given an extension.
Yeah.
How does that play out? And do you expect Elon Musk to potentially pick it up?
I think we have no idea who would pick it up if it was pick up a bowl.
Yep.
But I'm not clear that the Chinese are prepared to sell it. It takes two. And for China to give up TikTok, including the algorithms, which make it valuable, they would clearly need something significant in return from the Trump administration. It's not clear to me that they're on the precipice of getting that. And also, I don't know that Trump can extend this.
All right.
I mean, this is a law that was passed, bipartisan support, House and Senate and Congress, 9-0 Supreme Court ruling upholding the law.
Yeah.
And now Trump is saying, well, I can just change the law. No, he can't.
Yeah.
And Republican Senior Senator Tom Cotton, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson have both said publicly that this is beyond the pale what Trump is doing. So there is significant pushback from a balance of power that still exists.
A final question.
Yeah.
Canada and Greenland. Was just a big exaggeration on Trump's part? Canada is a new state of America and Greenland he wants.
So
he wants Canada as well.
First time he ran for president, he wasn't as powerful, but he talked about Mexico going to pay for the wall that he's going to build. It's 2025. Have the Mexicans paid anything? No. But the Mexicans did increase border security on the southern border of Mexico, and that reduced the number of illegal immigrants that came through Mexico into the United States. Trump does have things he wants from Greenland, wants from Canada, wants from Panama. There are economic issues, there are strategic national security issues. And his view of how to get leverage is making these maximal, exaggerated demands. He is not going to put a flag for the United States that will declare ownership. But the pressure will mean that they are going to start responding in a way that is like a supplicant. Let's face it, these are not countries that have a lot of leverage versus the United States.
Ian Bremmer, thank you very much for speaking to us. Ian Bremmer over there telling us a little bit about what he sees coming up next. It's going to be a pretty interesting time going forward with politics in the United States. Donald Trump about to be sworn in as the next president of the United States.
Right, so those are live pictures coming in from Capitol Hill, where the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump is currently taking place. There are several dignitaries, VIPs. It's a star-studded affair there at Washington, D.C. These are live pictures coming in, as we mentioned. You could see several former U.S. presidents gathered there. We saw glimpses coming in of Bill Clinton, George Bush, and of course their counterparts as well, their partners as well, rather, who are also there with them. We are expecting, this is of course just the beginning of the inauguration ceremony. In a short while from now, we are expecting J.D. Vance as well as
the
Donald
Republican
Trump to
staff
take
director
oath.
of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Ms. Emily Leviner, the Senate Secretary for the Minority, the Honorable Gary Myrick, the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Officer, the Honorable Catherine Spindor, and Mr. Bruce Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Biden and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
Right, so those are the pictures coming in from Capitol at Washington, D.C., where the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump is set to take place. And we'll be getting you all the updates as they come in. And of course, keep going back to the live pictures there. But for the moment, we'll head into a short break. But we'll be back in a few seconds. Stay with us.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.
Kind attention, please. Delhi Election Metro 2025 is arriving on people's platform.
Please mind the gap.
BJP or AAP, who will get to the Delhi Secretariat station?
दरवाजे बाईं तरफ खुलेंगे.
Who will Delhi voters open the victory doors for? And who will be shown the door? Can the BJP throw AAP's victory run off track? Or will it be Kejriwal's ticket to win again? Can Congress take the election metro to revival? We will track it all for you. Delhi's decision destination.
Doors will open on the left.
Stay tuned to NDTV for mega metro poll coverage.
Well, I'm in Altadena. This is one of the worst hit areas. When disaster strikes, NDTV World brings you exclusive on-the-ground reports straight from the heart of the action.
A neighborhood in Los Angeles that has been devastated by fire.
I just received an emergency alert extreme, which has come on my phone.
Stay tuned for NDTV World's in-depth coverage as we bring you the real stories from Los Angeles.
This is the Altadena area, and there are still fires, and there's a lot of smoke in the area. These houses completely gutted.
This is reporting that matters only on NDTV World.
been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Hello and welcome to the best of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
For 2 decades, NDTV has been a window to the world's greatest thinkers, leaders, Nobel laureates and stars at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
From Bill Gates to Shakira to Randy Zuckerberg to top ministers to what is often the biggest story, India, a global economic powerhouse. Conversations around our greatest challenges from AI to wars to sustainability. Join us, NDTV's Vishnu Shom and me, Neeraj Shah, as we engage with the world's finest. NDTV at Davos from January 20th to January 25th.
All set for Trump 2.0. Countdown to January 20th. Terror shadow, visa wars. All the twists and turns. Tracking Trump takeover. Every day at 10:30 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.
Kind attention, please.
Good evening. You're watching NDTV's special broadcast. All eyes are on Washington, D.C. In fact, we're getting you live pictures coming in from the Capitol building at the Washington, D.C., where Trump's inauguration ceremony is currently taking place. In a short while from now, in just a few moments, in fact, Donald Trump will take oath for a second term as President of United States. He will be sworn in as the 47th U.S. President. The inauguration ceremony, which has already begun, and these are the live pictures from the Capital One Arena, It's an indoor ceremony today due to the chilly temperatures at Washington, D.C. Now, it's a star-studded affair, with the event being attended by top world leaders, tech moguls and celebrities. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is representing India at the event. It's not just the oath ceremony, but also what Trump intends to do on his very first day in office that has triggered a lot of interest. At his victory rally on Sunday, Donald Trump reiterated that he's going to sign a host of executive orders based on his campaign promises. These are the pictures which are coming in at the moment, and as I mentioned, we are expecting that first his Vice President, J.D. Vance, will be taking oath, and right after that, Donald Trump.
To thee, I will be. Oh, America, no weeping, let there be no wounded heart. I will keep you in my keeping till there'll be grand, and all through this land you are beautiful to me. Oh, America, you're calling. Oh, I can hear you calling me. You are calling me to pay to thee, to thee, oh, I will be. And we will be as one.
Right, so the ceremony is underway as we speak, and for India, this is a moment of keen interest. Trump has promised drastic changes, including tightening immigration laws and imposing higher tariffs on imports from many countries. And as Trump steps up once again to lead the world's largest economy, the big question is, how will his second term shape India-US relations moving forward? But before we get into that question, let's cut across live to Nick Harper, NDTV's correspondent reporting live from Washington, D.C. Nick, this is a first of many sorts, in a way that there are several firsts in the inauguration ceremony that we are looking at the moment. Now, how does this compare to Trump's oath-taking ceremony in the first term? If you can just encapsulate it for our viewers briefly.
Yeah, it's very different from 8 years ago when Donald Trump first took office in 2017. Obviously, then he did it from the usual location, the swearing-in ceremony and his inaugural address taking place on the steps of the US Capitol outside. But that's not happening today. They're inside the rotunda of the US Capitol because of those freezing temperatures outside. Politically, in many ways, the United States has changed dramatically in the years since his first term. And we've seen Donald Trump really dominate politics over the last 4 years, even during a period when he's been out of office, with Joe Biden as the president. Many Republicans really rallying around Donald Trump since his election loss in 2020, really helping to propel him back to the White House. So he returns more confident, with more loyalists around him, and he's promising a new dawn for America with many planned actions in the hours ahead.
Right, and we can see Mr. Trump actually walking in right now on your screens there. And a lot is in fact expected from his inaugural speech as well. So as per reports, Nick, what can we expect? Is it going to be a very short and brief speech? Or is he going to, in a way, build further on what he spoke at the victory rally that we saw on Sunday, where he in fact reiterated that he is going to stick to his campaign promises and sign a bunch of executive orders on day one itself?
Well, look, 8 years ago when he was outside, when it was cold, he spoke for less than 20 minutes. But we know that Donald Trump likes to speak in length, often up to 1.5, 2 hours in rallies. Will we see that today? That's unclear. But some excerpts that have been released from his inaugural address, he says that he's going to speak about the confidence and the optimism that he feels for what he calls the start of a thrilling new era of national success. He says it's going to be a tide of change sweeping the United States. Many executive orders, potentially in the region of about 100, will be signed on this first day alone, far more than we would usually see. Many of them dealing with energy, increasing domestic production of oil and gas, rewinding various climate initiatives of the Biden administration, clamping down on immigration and securing the border, and looking to reform of government agencies and cutting waste that he sees currently in those agencies. So plenty he hopes to get his teeth into on day one, but it's very clear that he intends to hit the ground running, coming out with a whole range of actions. We'll likely see those unfolding in the coming hours.
Right, sweeping changes, and he is likely to hit the ground running. Jessica Stone, VOA correspondent, also joins us from Washington, D.C. As Nick was mentioning over there, that based on the excerpts which have been released of his inaugural speech, it looks like he is going to actually sign a host of orders on the very first day. Realistically, what is expected? Jessica?
Yeah, so we heard Nick mention the energy executive orders, but of course we know that there's also going to be at least 10 of them on immigration policy, surging extra resources to the southern border, declaring a national emergency on that border, changing the way the amnesty declarations asylum declarations and processes are done in this country, changing potentially the way H-1Bs and other higher education immigration processes are going. But nonetheless, definitely some big changes on the immigration front. Also, we should point out there's going to be some changes on the TikTok front, right? We've had a direct promise from President Donald Trump, the incoming leader, that he will give 90 days extra time at least to TikTok to negotiate the sale of ByteDance of the app from ByteDance to an American or a Western buyer. And we know that some of the big buyers that have gotten in line include Elon Musk, who of course is very close to the president. And we're also going to see some big changes in the federal workforce, changing the way hiring is done, reducing the amount that diversity, equity, and inclusion, or sexual orientation, race, and religion take place in that process, and moving more towards, or at least taking that out of the process, I should say. Right now, you're seeing J.D. Vance coming up and is set to be sworn in. He's going to be the youngest vice president in quite some time, at just 40 years old. He is from the millennial generation, so really a marked change from the kinds of leaders that the U.S. has elected in the past.
Right, Jessica, quickly before we'll probably have to cut back to the pictures full frame once again, but realistically, as you were mentioning, that there will be at least 10 executive orders that Trump might be signing on the very first day in office. But as far as his promises regarding tightening immigration policies is concerned, is the infrastructure up and ready for actually carrying out those mass deportations that he has promised?
No, not completely. But Tom Homan has been out in the press, who his borders are, talking about using the ICE processes. These are the enforcement customs and enforcement, immigration customs and enforcement agents, that they already know that there's about 700,000 migrants here in this country with criminal records who are not here with legal status, and that is where they plan to begin. Tom Homan has promised a very transparent process where he tells the American people what kinds of deportations, what kinds of immigration enforcement actions are going to take place. We'll have to see if he makes good on his word and the word of the president.
Right, Jessica Stone there. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at the inaugural ceremony as it's taking place currently at Washington.
Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable John Thune, and the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, and Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Right, and as the inauguration ceremony is underway, I am also joined on the broadcast by special guests who will be discussing all aspects of Trump 2.0 in a way. I'm joined on the broadcast currently by Richard Rousseau from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He, of course, specializes on US-India policy matters, and also by Matt Flink, a Republican strategist. Thank you to both of you for joining us on the show. Richard, coming to you first, as far as India-US ties are concerned, what can we expect in the initial days? Is it going to be a carryover from Biden administration?
There's going to be some areas of continuity and some areas of change. And of course, we know from Trump's last time in office that he holds India as kind of a special place. I suspect the lane that I work in is going to be a little bit more protected than some of the other lanes where you saw relations with Canada and Australia and NATO challenged quite a bit last time. But President Trump really did double down the India relationship. In defense, I think in the core, again, is going to be the area that will be protected the most and elevated. You saw Trump double down on the defense tie, signing a number of important agreements, elevating the Quad to cabinet level, which, of course, then President Biden took all the way to the leaders level. I think also you're going to see less pressure in India on some of the social issues that we comment on repeatedly that sometimes, bother India, drive it, and think that we're looking at India very differently. But there will be some areas of challenge on trade. I think you're going to see Trump looking at restoring American manufacturing. So some of the things that we've done on supporting friendshoring of critical technologies to India, a lot more contentious, I think, relations on some of the trade issues where you've seen India adopt protectionist policies, and including the United States, we'll have some of our own. And immigration, I think India, I know from Delhi, it seems like they're in the limelight. Of course, it's going to focus a lot on unskilled immigration coming from the border. But you do have a lot of Indian H-1B workers that overstay the visa, some that try to come through the southern border. So immigration, I think, indirectly will be some challenge. But overall, I think India will be prized and protected a bit more than some of our other historic relationships.
Mm-hmm. Right, Matt, bringing you in now, and we'll, of course, talk more in depth on the immigration aspect and what it means for America and what are the changes that he's going to bring in immediately. But as far as the H-1B visa issue is concerned, now Donald Trump has previously said in recent weeks, in fact, that he backs merit when it comes to the H-1B visa debate issue. Now, what's the latest we are hearing from his advisors on this matter?
Well, he said repeatedly that he supports the H-1B. And look,
all right, Matt,
we'll
come back to you for your comments. We'll have to cut across live to the ceremony.
For the past year, I've chaired the inaugural ceremony committee, which includes the leadership of Congress from both parties. We thank the committee and Capitol staff and law enforcement who worked so hard over the last year, and especially the last 3 days. You've done a beautiful job, and you have shown grace under pressure. Our theme this year is our enduring democracy. The presence of so many presidents and vice presidents here today is truly a testament to that endurance. We welcome President Biden and Dr. Biden. We welcome Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff, President Obama, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, President Bush and Laura Bush, Vice President Pence, Vice President Quayle and Marilyn Quayle. The justices of the United States Supreme Court are with us, all 9 of them I counted, and of course the Trump and Vance families. This ceremony marks what will soon be 250 years of our democracy. It is the moment when leaders, elevated by the will of the people, promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, the guardians of our country. Through war and peace, through adversity and prosperity, we hold this inauguration every 4 years, and today it falls on Martin Luther King Day, a further reminder that we must strive to uphold the values enshrined in our Constitution, the freedoms, the liberties, and, as is inscribed on the entrance of the United States Supreme Court, equal justice under law. But what makes this moment more than a passing ceremony is all who are watching it across the country, the people of this nation, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. President Kennedy, who at one point worked as a senator in this building and would often walk through this very rotunda, once said, "In a democracy, every citizen, regardless of interest in politics, holds office. Every one of us is in a position of responsibility." With that responsibility of citizenship comes an obligation not to seek out malice, as President Lincoln once reminded us, but to view others with a generosity of spirit despite our differences. With that responsibility of leadership comes an obligation to stand our ground when we must and find common ground when we can. With everything swirling around us, the hot mess of division, it is on all of us, to quote an incredible songwriter who just happened to be born in my state, to ensure that our nation's democracy is our shelter from the storm. There's a reason this ceremony takes place at the Capitol. In other countries, it might be in a presidential palace or a gilded executive office building. Here it is traditionally held at the Capitol, the People's House. It is a fitting reminder of the system of checks and balances that is the very foundation of our government, 3 equal branches of government. That is how, for nearly 250 years, our great American experiment, grounded in the rule of law, has endured. So, as we inaugurate a new president and vice president, let us remember that the power of those in this room comes from the people. The construction workers who build our country, the teachers and healthcare workers who nurture us, the troops defending our freedoms, and yes, the firefighters in Los Angeles putting themselves on the line for us. Our democracy's strength and grit must match theirs. May God bless our nation. Thank you.
Right, so we are expecting that J.D. Vance is going to be taking oath first as the Vice President of the United States.
Good afternoon. Endurance through the years is the ultimate test. To persevere through time is the truest measure of an idea, an institution, and a nation. Our founders wrote the Constitution so that America could withstand all the twists and turns of time. They wrote it to guide us and to preserve forever our right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as much as the truths and principles enshrined in our Constitution remain the same, our democracy promises the people the power to change, to chart their own destiny. That's the beauty. That is the importance of democracy. It allows the endurance, the permanence of a nation through change. It allows nations like our United States both to avoid the obstacles and to seize the opportunities God has placed before us, all while staying true to our founding principles. Today is our country's 60th inauguration ceremony. Like all the others before it, it is a celebration of our right to set our uniquely American course. The past several years have been trying at times for many, many Americans, and also for the nations of the free world that we humbly strive to lead. In November, Americans chose again to steer this nation towards greatness, the secure, safe, and prosperous future that our founders envisioned for all of us. And today, we celebrate not only their decision to do so, but also the simple right and wisdom of a free people to make their own choice so that their nation might endure. And now, allow me to welcome Archbishop Timothy Dolan and Reverend Franklin Graham.
Right, so let us go back to our guests who have joined us on the show. Matt, you were making a point as far as H-1B visa issue is concerned. Please go ahead and complete your point. Sorry, we had to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, please. I'll always yield the floor to the senator from Minnesota. Look, I think that Donald Trump has said that H-1B visas are important, that he supports them. I think that there's a recognition among Elon Musk and others that will clearly be influential in the Trump administration that they want to keep them. There may be some reforms to the H-1B visa program, but again, and I think I've said this before, that the focal point of Donald Trump on immigration, on the issue of immigration, are the people, the upwards of 10 million people within the last 4 years who have entered this country illegally, most specifically these 700,000 illegal immigrants who have committed crimes beyond the crime of entering the country illegally, have committed crimes in this country. That's where Donald Trump is going to start. And I think that initial tranche of people is going to take a concerted effort by Tom Homan, as well as the entire Trump administration and most of government. He will have some executive orders, I believe 10 of them, on illegal immigration today that are really going to change the tone. And to be honest with you, it's going to fulfill the will of the American people. Upwards of 87% support the desire to, certainly to crack down on illegal immigration, as reported in the New York Times.
Right. I also welcome on the show Meera Shankar, former ambassador of India to the United States. Ma'am, Trump's focus on tightening immigration policies, as we were just discussing, is going to affect India-US ties, or at least it will be one of the aspects that we're going to look at. Now, according to US immigration data, India is one among the top countries whose nationals are facing some of those removal orders. What do you think diplomatically India can do, or what can we expect in terms of how this is going to affect us, and what should be our strategy to see this through?
I think India has not supported illegal migration at any point. Our focus has been always more on the legal movement of people through recognized visa programs. For Trump, his domestic agenda has clearly been driven by the strong sentiment in the US against continuing flow of migrants from various countries illegally into the US. He has promised the biggest mass deportation in history. There are about 1.5 million illegal migrants who are supposed to be ready for deportation because their legal processes have been completed, legal hearings have been completed. Of these, 18,000 are Indian nationals, and mainly from Punjab and Gujarat. And they could be amongst those being returned. Trump has threatened that he will impose tariffs on countries that do not speedily accept back their illegal migrants. Now, this is not a large number, but of the 11 million individuals residing illegally in the US, 750,000 are believed or assessed to be Indian nationals. That's a large figure, and it would be a challenge for both of the countries to navigate such massive numbers in terms of deportation. However, the process is not going to happen quickly because these individuals would have to be traced, would have to be rounded up, would have to be kept in camps, and then they would have recourse to legal hearings and processes. There could be civil society challenges to some of the action. So this process is going to take time, and it's not going to be that simple. It would also involve huge expenditure on additional outlays on administrative infrastructure to handle deportation of such a magnitude. But certainly, President Trump will keep this in focus, and legal migration will be a key issue which he will seek to staunch. Now, there's also been concern that some of Trump's constituency, particularly core MAGA supporters, have been pushing for a ban on the H-1B visa program as well. Now, these visas are used by companies, US companies, as well as Indian companies, to bring in specialized foreign nationals on a temporary basis for employment in the US. Indian companies do so in fulfillment of their business contracts with US companies to provide software services or other services. And US tech giants use them in their companies because of the skills shortage in the STEM sectors within the US. So this actually contributes to keeping US companies globally competitive and is something which helps the Elon Musk has spoken strongly in favor of the program, and so has Donald Trump in his recent statements.
Right.
However, this has evoked fierce backlash.
Veera Shankar, I'm really sorry to interrupt you there, but we are cutting across live once
against
again
all
now.
enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office.
The duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
On which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
So Donald J. Trump there, sworn in as the 47th U.S. president. This is, of course, his second term as the president of the United States. And both he and his deputy, J.D. Vance, they're taking oath in the U.S. Capitol, flanked by their partners there. You can see, of course, this is officially Donald Trump being sworn in as the U.S. president. We are expecting a speech from Donald Trump any moment now, but they're just completing the oath-taking part of this ceremony. Of course, we're expecting that the US president is going to deliver a short speech very soon. Right, and on the show, I'm also joined by Karthik Ramakrishnan, an immigration expert and a political scientist. Mr. Ramakrishnan, we are looking at the oath-taking ceremony, the inaugural ceremony of Donald Trump. It's still underway. In fact, we are expecting that Mr. Trump will be making his speech, delivering his speech very soon. But in terms of US-India relations, is this going to be what do you expect to take place in the first 100 days as far as US-India ties are concerned, and especially keeping this entire aspect of how Trump has vowed to tighten immigration policies in the country? How is that going to have an impact in the first 100 days, and especially as far as India is concerned?
Thank you for having me. I think what we can expect is a fair amount of disruption. Right. I mean, Trump is a disruptive president. He was in 2016 or 2017, right, when he came into the presidency, and probably even more so today. There is a lot more public support for shaking up the business as usual approach, not only on domestic policy, but also foreign policy in the United States. So I think that one of the big things to watch out for in the first 100 days is the difference between what is the rhetoric and what is the reality of how things will take shape, especially on immigration and on trade. So that remains to be seen, and sometimes it's unpredictable, even on an issue like China, for example, where that clearly plays a big role in terms of US-India relations. On the one hand, he's been talking a lot about tariffs and increasing tariffs dramatically, and continuing and even accelerating this rivalry with China. At the same time, when it comes to TikTok and the fact that it's Chinese owned, and we have the seeming understanding that he's going to be more lenient and allow a way for TikTok to not be penalized right away. So I think it's going to be a wait and see approach in terms of what is happening in the first week, as opposed to what happens in weeks 2, 3, and beyond.
Right. Richard, coming back to you once again. Now, the Chinese vice president is also part of the inauguration ceremony. He's attending the ceremony. Now, Karthik there was also talking about the China aspect. What can we expect will be Trump's strategy for China, and how should India view it?
Well, we saw Trump really dialing up, I think, U.S. responsiveness and standing up to China pressure on trade, on security across the region last time that he was in office. It was frankly one of the, I think, the most important steps that I think the administration took during that period. We've been really slow to kind of evolve America's position, even as we saw an expanding number of threats from China to the United States and to our partners and allies. I think that, you know, across the Washington establishment, with Trump kind of holding out a few things look a bit like olive branches, like TikTok. There's some, I would say, a rising number of voices that think that maybe there is some kind of grand bargain that can begin to more substantially repair relations between the United States and China. I personally don't subscribe to that. I think when you look at President Trump's previous term in office, when you look at a lot of his appointees so far, who are relatively hawkish on China. You may have some small, modest wins here and there on the U.S.-China relationship, but I think overall, again, China is the pacing threat that's kind of driving. So as we look to rebuild our technology industry in the face of China trying to dominate certain industries like quantum computing and AI, when we look at military mobilization and partnerships across the region, we see greater threats in recent years that China presents in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, the Taiwan Straits. So the threats continue to grow and escalate. And I suspect that you're going to continue seeing President Trump, as we did last time, doubling down on relationships, rebuilding American industry in some of those sectors, and really finding new ways to push back. That's my sense of how this is going to play out. But hopefully, some areas where we both agree there should be reduction in frictions, because we don't want conflict if we can avoid it. But a lot of that is going to reside in Beijing more so than in Washington.
Right. Matt, if you can also weigh in on this, do you think Trump's China containment policy, such as tariffs or military presence in the Indo-Pacific, is that going to complicate or complement India's own challenges with Beijing?
I think that given, as has been expressed, the unique relationship that America has with India, I think that in many ways it will complement that. I don't think that it's a zero-sum game where for us to win, you have to lose. I think that, you know, India will benefit from Trump efforts to unite with our allies to a greater extent and to make the region safer. I think that by pushing back on China, it will ultimately help India. And again, I agree with the previous panelist and previous guest who said, you know, America does not want a war with China, but we're certainly not going to cave to Chinese aggression in that part of the world. I think that the world in many cases depends on us, and Trump will make he'll be a much more reliable partner for our allies in that part of the world in terms of a strong national defense. Right. So I think that the special relationship between India and China will benefit.
I believe that Donald Trump is going to deliver a speech right now.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we're watching fires still tragically burn. From weeks ago, without even a token of defense, they're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural, and very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states, and the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor, we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again, right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal, and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before to restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government. My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law. And we are going to bring law and order back to our cities. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. This week, I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. It's going to end immediately. Our armed forces will be freed to focus on their sole mission, defeating America's enemies. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name. of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children safe, healthy, and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation, and right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We are going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was the first speech as the 47th US President by Donald Trump. In his speech, he has clearly highlighted his priority areas, which are largely on expected lines. But if I can just point out some of the key quotes which have come in from Donald Trump, he has essentially said that his priority will be to end America's decline, and that the golden age of America begins from today. He's also talked about in some detail about the series of executive orders that he's going to sign on the very first day of taking office. He's talked about the fact that he's going to declare a national emergency at the US-Mexico border, and that all illegal entries will be immediately halted at that border, and that he's going to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Second priority, he's listed that his cabinet's focus will be to tackle inflation, and as a part of that, he's going to declare national emergency. He's already talked about it in the past, that he's going to ensure that there is a revamp as far as US's energy protocol is concerned. Thirdly, he is going to overhaul the trade system. Trump once again highlighted that he is going to tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich American citizens and establish an external revenue service to collect the tariff. Some of the other aspects which he has mentioned in his speech, which in a way correlates to his campaign promises, he's talked about the fact that he is going to end wars and also make sure that America is not part of wars that they need not get into. He pointed out that he wants to leave a legacy of being known as a peacemaker and a unifier, essentially talking about the Russia-Ukraine war as well as the Israel-Hamas war. So several quotable quotes which have come out from the speech of Donald Trump there. And so a speech which lasted around about half an hour or so, the first speech that he's delivered as the 47th US President. Right, Karthik Ramakrishnan, immigration expert and political scientist, still with us on the show. Karthik, my first question to you, what do you make of this speech from Donald Trump, President Donald Trump now?
Well, I think the speech was largely expected. It went along the lines in terms of what the priorities he had laid out. I think, when it comes to India and Indian Americans, the immigration policy that he laid out and the kind of the stark line that he drew in the sand, if you will, I think will be important to see. Many people may not know that the number of undocumented Indian immigrants has increased significantly in the last decade, from 400,000 to over 700,000. And so what will happen to Indian immigrants who are here illegally, that'll be a big question. And what will it mean for U.S.-India relations if India is asked to accept these deportees back? And what is the scale we're talking about? Are we talking about hundreds? Are we talking about thousands? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands? So that's going to be a big question in terms of what the implementation looks like. He also talks about America first, and that's where it's interesting. H-1B, he didn't talk about that much at all, but part of what Elon Musk says is that if America is going to be the best country in the world, they need to have the best talent of immigrants from around the world. So I think that provides a potential opening for high-scaled immigration, including immigration from India, to be part of this next story for America. So those are some of the big things, I think, that will be part of the U.S.-India relationship. And then we'll see, when it comes to other aspects like trade, whether that will directly impact India in terms of the tariffs that he will propose and enact, or if it'll spare India vis-a-vis other countries in the months to come.
Right, Karthik Ramakrishnan there, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I believe I also have Jessica Stone, VOA correspondent, with us, joining us from Washington, D.C. Jessica, you heard the speech there. So in comparison to what we saw in his inaugural speech as when he was taking oath as the president for the first time, a more mellow version of Donald Trump here?
Much more mellow, much more on script, much more presidential, if I may say so, than the last time we saw him in these. He really does seem to be overtaken by the moment, somewhat subdued, very serious, taking the moment very seriously. And as your previous guest said, certainly taking all the steps that we anticipated him to do with the executive orders and executive actions he's announced. But it's woven together with hope and optimism in a way that it wasn't before. He talks about putting stars and stripes on the planet Mars. So there's this aspirational aspect about returning more astronauts to outer space. And of course, he has his man at the ready there, Elon Musk with SpaceX, and Jeff Bezos with Blue Origins. He talked about the ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation, and that is the definition of how the United States behaves and aspires to be. America, the impossible is what we do. And lastly, a new spirit of unity in a world that has been angry and unpredictable. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. So this really is a different tone that he struck today.
That's right. Jessica, thanks so much for joining us from Washington, D.C. And I'm also joined by Caroline Malone, of FSN correspondent, who's joining us. She's actually at the at the venue of the inauguration ceremony. Caroline, yes, we saw a very spirited speech from Donald Trump, but a more mellow version of President Trump than we have seen probably in the first term as US president. So if you can tell us about, okay, we will reconnect with Caroline in a short while from now, but we are also joined on the broadcast by a few guests, Alex Zidane, Republican strategist, joining us on the show, and also Dr. Richard Benkin, author and commentator and an expert on US-India relations. My first question to both of you, in fact, your initial impression of the speech coming in from President Trump.
It was a hopeful speech. And that was something that President Trump's detractors maybe weren't going to give him credit for. But this was a speech that was focused on looking forward, whether he talked about the changes that he was going to make within the administration or the changes like planting a United States flag on the surface of Mars. This was a speech that in large part looked forward to what President Trump called the golden age of America that is yet to come. So yes, this speech was different than a speech you would see at a rally. It's wholly appropriate because he's speaking not just to the entire country, he's speaking to the entire world. There are people out there that want to know what kind of president Donald Trump is going to be. And he showed us today he's going to be a president who stands up for the common man, a president who protects American interests, a president who respects tradition, and a president who wants to have the future at his grasp. A very hopeful, inspiring speech.
Right. Dr. Benkin?
Yes, I agree entirely with that. I also think that President Trump made it clear that he was going to do the things that won him re-election. He spoke to the individual American, and I think he gave us all some hope. I also think in one of the ways that things are going to shift, I think it's kind of clear when you look at President Trump and you listen to the things he said, is that he will be more focused on what people do rather than the words they use to describe what they do. And I think that also is very hopeful because it speaks of an administration that will take action.
Mm-hmm. Right. Alex Zidane, if I can come back to you once again, you know, he spoke about a few things and several of the points that he raised in his speech are tied in with his campaign promises, but not a lot of details which have come through. In fact, if we talk about the tariff aspect, he said that an external revenue service will be there to collect tariff and taxes from foreign countries. But how exactly is he going to go about it? He did not mention any country today, but we have seen in the past he's specifically mentioned Canada and China and Mexico. So is there any further detail that we can expect to come through over the next week or so on this matter?
Well, yes, it was clearly directed at, I would say, number one, China, number two, Mexico, number three, Canada. It was a messaging statement. Presidents in inaugural addresses, States of the Union, they're not just statements of policy, they're statements of intent. And President Trump stated his intent is to make the marketplace across the world fairer and more profitable for American companies who are being undercut by the nefarious trade practices, especially of China and the Chinese Communist Party. I expect there to be some back and forth, some negotiation in how this actually gets implemented. So it seems clear to me that he's leaving that room. He's letting his team figure out the details. That's what leaders do. Leaders of as vast and dynamic a country as the United States of America, and as big and sometimes unwieldy an executive branch of federal government as President Trump is now in command of. This is a statement of intent. And he'll have his folks on the Federal Trade Commission, his folks in commerce, the people who are coming in, who are still being confirmed, who are still coming into the administration over the next few days and weeks, sort out those details on a rolling basis. But this was clearly a message directed at China and their unfair trade practices.
Right. I believe that Caroline Malone, FSN correspondent, who is at the venue of the inauguration ceremony, is back with us. Caroline, I was in fact asking you that it's a more mellow version of President Trump that we are seeing today in his first speech as the 47th US president. How would you compare this to what we saw back in 2016 and 17?
You're a big fan of news? Hey, who are you with? I'm just curious.
Oh, sorry, Kate. I thought you were
Right. We seem to be having some audio issues with Caroline there. But going back to Dr. Richard Benkin, as far as US-India relations are concerned, we saw, of course, Dr. S. Jaishankar there, our External Affairs Minister, sitting right in the front row of the inauguration ceremony. But as far as the trade and tariff issue is concerned, as well as the immigration policies are concerned, these are going to be the top two, in a way, concerns or hurdles, so to speak, for India to tackle in this new era, in the second term of Donald Trump as president. So what do you think India can expect in the first 100 days of Trump taking office in Washington, D.C.?
I think I'd like to place a different spin on things. We know from President Trump's first term in office that he and Prime Minister Modi have an excellent relationship. I think they both look at things in similar way. I remember, and this I think would resonate greatly with Trump supporters, that Prime Minister Modi's catchphrase was more governance, less government. And I think that really jives with the kind of thing that President Trump is bringing back to this country. Rather than focus on individual items, immigration or trade, which will be issues that India and the United States are going to have to debate, but negotiate as two friends with similar interests. I would say to any foreign leader, and especially great friends like India, to take President Trump at his word. President Trump made it very clear he is looking out for American interests. That doesn't mean that he doesn't care about other people or other interests, but it does mean that's the perspective he's going to take. And what I would advise Prime Minister Modi and India or any other country is look at how our interests can align. Now, we're two separate countries. We're going to have disagreements. There are going to be times when our interests don't perfectly align, but look for those opportunities to align our interests, where our interests align, and perhaps then through a process of negotiation, we come to something that works for both. I think that's really a way to approach the second Trump presidency. Recognize that here's what the perspective he's going to take is that he's looking out for the interests of the American people. However, it's all up for negotiation. What's going to work best? And that works better when you allow the parties of good faith to work it out rather than to impose certain mandate, which again, I think what he will be about with friends like India will be about that process of negotiation.
Mm-hmm. Right, a process of negotiation, I'm sure, which all the diplomats will be engaging in very soon. Daniel Block, Senior Editor, Foreign Affairs and a contributing editor at the Washington Monthly, also joins us on the show. So Daniel, as I was asking the other guests as well, what's your first thought as far as this speech of President Trump is concerned? Anything that stood out for you or any surprises?
I don't think I was terribly surprised by anything. It was, in terms of perhaps the cadence of his delivery, somewhat more mellow than his inaugural address in 2017. But in terms of the content, it was really quite similar. All these references to how he's going to make America great again, make America glorious again. Discussion of how he didn't use the term American carnage this time like he used in 2017. But that was very much the undertone, that the United States is in some sort of state of disaster and that he and he alone can fix it. A lot of promises, as you might expect, to cracking down on immigration, kicking immigrants out of the country. Perhaps the newest thing was the hardcore leaning into colonialism. So the talk about taking back the Panama Canal, a lot of the references to former US President William McKinley, who was one of the more outwardly colonial former US leaders. But on the whole, it's very in keeping with the things Trump has said since he began running for president the first time in 2015.
Mm-hmm. Sameer Khedkar, U.S. immigration lawyer, is also joining us on the show. Sameer, do you think, in your opinion, of course, based on the speech as well, but otherwise what we have heard from President Trump in the past few days, what do you think is going to be the tone and tenor of U.S.-India relations going forward from here?
Yeah, well, I think there are two things that are happening here as it relates to U.S.-India relations and immigration in particular. When you think of immigration and U.S.-India relations, you think of the H-1B, and that has not really been the topic over the last few days. As much of the focus in the speech has been on illegal immigration and the crisis at our border. However, there are two camps within the Trump administration that are starkly divided in their views on H-1B immigration, and we'll see over the coming days what happens to the H-1B, and specifically as it relates to U.S.-India relations, because one camp is in favor. You saw footage of Sundar Pichai, Elon Musk, Bezos, all of whom run companies that employ thousands of H-1B holders and are starkly in favor of the H-1B. On the other hand, as policymakers, Stephen Miller and others are very much not in favor of the H-1B and an business immigration at all, right? And so they are the ones that are entrenched with policymaking and decision-making authority. And so we have this divide, and the coming days will show us what will happen.
Right. I believe Nick Harper, NDTV correspondent, is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Nick, we heard President Trump talk about what his priorities are. He set his priorities out right in front of everyone to see. We are also expecting that in a short while from now, he's going to sign some executive orders in connection to those priorities and promises that he just made. So what are we looking at in terms of the first action likely going to be on immigration policies? Anything that we will see coming through in terms of an order today?
Yeah, potentially 3 locations for the signing of these orders. Here at the US Capitol, where he still is, he could potentially sign in the coming minutes, and then in front of a crowd of 20,000 supporters at a nearby sports arena where he's due to speak in a couple of hours' time, and then potentially more orders when he gets to the White House this evening. But it does seem as if immigration will be his first target. He mentioned that during his speech, saying that it was very much his plan to declare a national emergency at the southern border. He said it would begin the process of returning millions and millions of illegal immigrants. We are expecting in that order for him to order the US military to the border to secure it and to revoke a number of things that have been in place under the Biden administration, things that will change very rapidly, including ending the practice of catch and release and also reinstating his Remain in Mexico policy, a policy that he had in place during his first presidency, but making it clear that immigration, something he campaigned very hard on during the election, is still his top priority and will be amongst those first orders that he signs within the coming minutes.
Right, Nick, we saw J.D. Vance and Donald Trump take oath today, but the rest of his cabinet colleagues are still to take oath. Realistically speaking, is there a timeline that we are looking at? Or can we set a timeline to some of these orders or these actions actually taking place? Because that would mean that his team will actually have to be in office in order to execute his directions.
Yeah, just on the cabinet, we're expecting to see Marco Rubio, the incoming Secretary of State, sworn in by the end of the day, but he could be the only cabinet member that Donald Trump has before the end of day one. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, is also up for a vote at some point soon, but that could be pushed into tomorrow. But he will need his cabinet around him. The problem is, in recent years, over the last few administrations, partisan politics has very much slowed up these nominees' appointments, the votes that are needed in the Senate. And therefore, we're seeing Donald Trump, like he did last time round, when he only had 2 cabinet positions filled at the start of his presidency, not having his top team yet assembled. His plan will be, of course, to get the Senate voting as quickly as possible during the course of this week to get those confirmations done. And then he can get about the business of governing the country through those executive orders, which he was outlining in that speech.
Harper there, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Let me go back to Daniel Block. Daniel, as I was asking Nick as well, is there a timeline that you think we can look at as some of these key promises are concerned or these key executive orders are concerned? We're expecting that he's going to sign some of them today itself. He has, in fact, promised a blitz of executive orders on day one. But within the first 100 days of his presidency, what do you think we can expect?
I think we can expect 2 things, broadly speaking, and I'm going to go beyond the executive orders that Nick helpfully covered. but they're related. The first is going to be more crackdowns on immigration, more efforts to deport people from the country. The second is going to be tax cuts. And I'm sure there will be more things we see. We could see a crackdown on the press. There are various other steps that he'd certainly like to take. Those are the two that I feel most comfortable predicting will happen. The question is going to be timing, and the question is going to be magnitude. Republicans have a very thin majority in the House of Representatives. They really can only afford to lose a couple of votes, a handful of votes at most. And that's going to make it difficult for what's typically a very divided and factitious caucus to get things through. So that could be a constraint on the magnitude of the legislative accomplishments that Trump looks to pass. And the party is already having disputes and feuds over what mechanisms they want to take in order to try and get bills through Congress. They don't have a supermajority in the Senate, so they can't necessarily close off the filibuster. So they're going to have to use a kind of series of intricate parliamentary maneuvers in order to get things through. And there's all this disputes and infighting going on about whether it's best to try and combine all his legislative priorities into one bill or to split it up into two bills. So I think we'll see lowering of taxes and we'll see more crackdown on immigration. The extent to which we'll see both and the amount of time it takes to get those priorities in place is going to depend on what happens in the coming weeks and months.
Mm-hmm. Alex Zidane, if I can bring you back into the conversation, one of the aspects, one of the angles which affects India a lot, and Indian professionals for that matter, is the H-1B visa issue. Now, we've heard both from Donald Trump and also from Elon Musk, who is one of his closest advisors in this particular dispensation, that they do believe that merit should come first. But what do you think, if there are Indian professionals or young Indian students who are watching this program, what would you like to tell them today?
I think they should listen to the words of President Trump in his speech. One of the things that he focused on in a very wide-ranging speech was the idea that merit is back. The meritocracy is being reestablished. And I think that for those students from India, from other nations who have skills, who are willing to work hard, who want to come to this country on an H-1 visa and make their lives here, at least for a period of time, and contribute to this great American engine of economic activity, President Trump is extending a hand to them. So in terms of what's going on in his orbit, President Trump settled that. President Trump said he wants the best and the brightest to come to the United States of America to continue to grow our industries, whether it's energy, whether it's artificial intelligence, cloud computing, chips. America needs the brain power that we've historically attracted from all corners of the globe coming here to continue to foster a climate of innovation and competitiveness. And that is part of what makes America great.
Mm-hmm. I'm also joined by Pradeep Gupta, Chairman and Managing Director of Access My India, who is joining us live from Washington, D.C. as we speak. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining us. Now, your initial thoughts on Donald Trump's speech, and how do you think Trump 2.0 is going to be different for India compared to the first term?
Okay, so let me tell you, your viewers, that at Access My America, we predicted Trump victory spot on. I would say everything is matching the popular vote share and the electoral votes, both. And we also asked people, what is your expectation from next president? I will try and read that, and which is being featured in Trump's speech today. First is strong national security. This is the first. Second is stop illegal migration. The third is control inflation. The fourth is better medical facility, lower cost, particularly quality and lower cost of healthcare. These are the few points which has been broadly covered by the Trump. And the most important, what I can see, is the bringing manufacturing back, and his lots of focus on energy, particularly oil and gas. It means America needs people, America needs talent, and I don't see any problem as far as the legal visas are, if at all there is a problem, it is the illegal immigration, I would say that.
So illegal immigration, and that is of course something that President Trump has largely spoken about, especially with regard to the US-Mexico border. I'm also joined on the show by Stephen Erlanger, Chief Diplomatic Correspondent, Europe for the New York Times. Thank you so much, Mr. Langer, for joining us. In terms of geopolitics, we also saw President Trump, in fact, saying that he would want to leave behind a legacy and be known as a peacemaker and unifier. In a way, also taking credit, of course, to the first hostages being released by Hamas and being sent back to Israel. But in terms of the two conflicts, the two wars that we have, in fact, seen between Israel, Hamas, and also Russia and Ukraine, what kind of an impact do you think President Trump is going to have in the first 100 days of him taking office?
I don't think he's going to have a huge impact in the first 100 days, but it depends on what he's willing to invest in. For example, on the Middle East, the war hasn't ended. We have a ceasefire. We're not even talking about ending the war for the first 16 days of the ceasefire. If we get to phase 2, which is going to be very, very complicated and difficult, and many people don't think we're going to get there, it would require Mr. Trump to exercise even more pressure on both sides. And in the meantime, he's got a whole domestic agenda, which we've been talking about. And on Ukraine, I mean, you can't force the Ukrainians to stop fighting or the Russians to stop fighting. You can talk about it, but Vladimir Putin thinks he's winning the war. And if you think you're winning the war, you have no real incentive to stop. Now, Trump can get Putin into a room and we can all be there and as journalists hang on every epic word that gets said. But the fact of the matter is, what America does, Ukraine has plenty of money for this year. It needs certain kinds of weapons. I don't think it's going to lay down just because Trump is president, and I don't think Putin's going to lay down either. So I know Trump wants to end the fighting, but the big challenge will be, even if there is a ceasefire organized in Ukraine, how do you guarantee the security of Ukraine for the rest of time against a new effort by Russia 2, 3, 4 years down the road to keep going in Ukraine? These are complicated things, and they're not going to be done in a minute, I promise you.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see whether President Trump makes any remarks on that as well. Dr. Richard Benkin, bringing you back into the conversation once again, and also returning our focus to the Indian subcontinent. How might President Trump's return reshape the US strategy as far as South Asia is concerned, particularly in balancing India and Pakistan?
I'm sorry, I missed the middle part of what you said.
Right. We were talking about President Trump and the impact that he could have in terms of reshaping US strategy in South Asia, particularly if we look at the balancing act that US government can have when it comes to India and Pakistan.
Yeah, well, I think that one thing that has never really been acknowledged in this geopolitical conflict is Pakistan is now clearly aligned with China. And I think that really changes the whole dynamic of how we look at that relationship. Secondly, I think there was a time when U.S. policy would have looked at Pakistan as being India's primary rival in the region. However, I think that's changed. And I really do believe from my colleagues, people I know who are close to in Washington, that in fact, there's much more of a focus on China as being India's primary rival. And then what can India do to prevent Chinese expansion? I think if you look at things that way, the issue of India-Pakistan really takes a whole different aspect and a backseat. Mm-hmm. By the way, I think in addressing one aspect of that, I expect to see a much clearer alignment of the U.S. with India, as opposed to that as you put a balancing act between India and Pakistan.
Right. We will also play out some of the excerpts from President Trump's speech. I believe there are shots also coming in right now of people leaving the inauguration ceremony venue there, the Capital One Arena. But before I go to playing out some of those sound bites coming in from the inauguration ceremony speech by President Trump, Daniel Block, you know, there are also concerns which are there, which have been expressed by his critics in terms of information control. All the big tech moguls were present at the inauguration ceremony, of course, led by Elon Musk, who is now one of the top government advisors. What kind of a message do you think the fact that all of them, whether it's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, all of them being present at this ceremony under one roof to be there for Donald Trump, for President Trump in a way, what kind of messaging does this send out, and what can we expect in terms of this concern that a lot of critics have about the kind of information control that President Trump will have going forward? And he also mentioned in his speech today that he's going to ensure that he'll bring free speech back to America.
I think it shows two things. The first is obviously the inroads, to put it mildly, that the Republican Party and Trump has made in Silicon Valley. For a while, this was a constituency that was thought to lean toward the Democrats. That's clearly not the case anymore. But more than that, I also think it indicates the fear or desire that some major tech and business leaders have about the Trump presidency, and this belief that he will use the tools of the federal government, which are substantial, in order to reward his friends and punish his adversaries or his critics. And this is a pretty classic tool that strongman leaders take. They use the institutions that they have at their disposal in order to go after institutions, or I should say businesses that are favorable to them, go after businesses that are not favorable to them, and to, reward their friends. And so you're looking at a president who's going to come in. He's going to appoint a new head of the Federal Trade Commission. He said he's going to replace the head of the Internal Revenue Service, which is the bureaucracy in the United States that oversees taxation. He's overseeing legislative majorities that are going to pass bills, and they want to be on the receiving end of whatever benefits he's going to provide. And they don't want to be the subject of investigations. They don't want to be the subject of audits. They don't want to find themselves being thrown in jail, or at risk of being thrown in jail, or at least having to spend lots of money on lawyers. And so you really see that at work here. Now, Musk obviously was one of the first people to get on board, but as we got closer to, we saw the Washington Post pull its endorsement of Harris, and we don't know exactly why that was, but there's certainly a lot of speculation that part of the reason might be that Jeff Bezos, whose other businesses have large amounts of money in federal contracts, doesn't want Trump to come after him. We see Mark Zuckerberg talking about how there's not enough masculine energy at Facebook, meeting with Stephen Miller, who's the new deputy chief of staff. Again, these are indications that these businesses want to kind of get in with the Trump administration. And that does happen to some extent with any government that comes in. They want to have a good relationship as best they can so that they can perform well. But we see that to an added extent here. And it does worry me. If you have the federal government using itself to try and get businesses and civil society and the private sector to work to a particular partisan advantage, that's not good for democracy.
Right. We will, in fact, touch upon a few more aspects coming out from President Trump's speech. But first, let's listen into some of the excerpts from what he said earlier.
For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. The golden age of America begins right now. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. The past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Saved by God to make America great again. Trump, in fact, talking about the assassination bid on him in Pennsylvania. Sameer Khetkar, what role do you think Prime Minister Modi and President Trump's interpersonal relations will play in terms of navigating some of the hurdles that India and, for that matter, the world is in a way preparing for? Because Donald Trump is known to be mercurial, unpredictable. So as per reports, we are given to believe that both sides, both India and the US, might be interested in a Trump and Modi meet over the next couple of months. So how do you see that playing out?
Well, I hope they do meet and discuss immigration policy, and I think this is going to be more urgent than initially expected. See, the one thing about immigration is that it's not clear. It's a very complicated issue, right? We're watching very closely a bill that is going to be voted on by the Senate and by Congress today called the Laken-Riley Act, right? This bill on its face seems like a good thing. It would require detention of illegal immigrants who commit crimes in the US. So that sounds like a good thing, right? But a secondary aspect of this bill would allow states to sue the State Department and consulates to prohibit all visas to be issued to any national of any country who does not take back their illegal immigrants. Right now, India is on a list of countries that does not take back their illegal immigrants. And Steve Bannon has come out and said he is going to use this rule to try to cancel all visas for Indian nationals. So a Trump and Modi meeting, right, is very important to discuss maybe taking India off of this list, maybe taking back their illegal immigrants, or doing something about this. The line between legal and illegal immigration is more blurred than we think.
I believe we have very little time left for this discussion, so I will take the final comments now from all my guests, starting with Daniel. What do you think that the world should be prepared for now that we have seen President Trump officially taking oath as the 47th US president? What are going to be the key features? We've seen Trump, in fact, highlighting some of it in his speech today itself, but what is it that we should be bracing for?
I think the two things that we can expect, if not with absolute certainty, with high degrees of certainty, or as we've been discussing, a crackdown on immigration, so it being harder for people from other countries to enter the United States, perhaps people who are currently in the United States having to go back to the countries from which they were originally from. The other, of course, has been discussed, is tariffs, and that extends to India, which Trump has said repeatedly is a country that he has trouble with on trade. But beyond that, I think the main thing I just say to some extent is expect the unexpected. President Trump has indicated throughout his first term, throughout his campaigns, that he's unpredictable internationally. And that's how he likes it. He said many times he enjoys being unpredictable and that he thinks that gives him negotiating leverage. And I think that means that a lot of things could happen that we can't foresee right now. He could promise some things that don't happen. Some things that he has promised might not happen. So I think just kind of in some ways buckle up.
Alex Zidane, your final thoughts?
I think we've seen today, and to a certain extent during the campaign, the emergence of Donald Trump, the peacemaker. What do presidents want once they get a second term, after they win that election, whether it's after 4 years or like President Trump with a 4-year gap in the middle? They want that Nobel Prize. And whether it's the war between Israel and Hamas, which President Trump has already successfully intervened to get that ceasefire, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or some unspecified, yet to emerge foreign crisis, President Trump, I believe, is serious about wanting to be a peacemaker, wanting that to be his legacy. And if he can solve one of the world's intractable foreign policy problems, if he can stop bloodletting and prevent death, prevent war, he will truly earn the title of peacemaker and be remembered as a great figure.
Right. Dr. Richard Benkin, please go ahead.
First, to people all over the world, take President Trump at his word, ignore the slanders and mischaracterizations that are thrown at him and about him, and look for ways that your interests align with American interests, because I think as a peacemaker, one wants to build coalitions. America first never meant America alone, but it does mean that he will not put the interests of the American people in second place. So look for how those interests align, and then work together to negotiate something that works best for both countries and, in fact, for the rest of the world. And I think that's what we can expect from a second Trump presidency.
Right. And the final word from Samir Khetkar.
Will Trump truly encourage merit-based immigration? If past behavior is any indication of future behavior, color me suspicious, because his administration made merit-based immigration very difficult for H-1B visa holders and student visa holders. So what I predict is what we see is a huge divide between two camps in his group, between those that are for merit-based immigration and those that are against it. And what I predict to see is just a lot of confusion, a lot of differing policies, and at the end of the day, not much movement gained in favor of merit-based immigration.
Right. Daniel Block, Alex Zidane, Dr. Richard Benkin, Samir Khetkar, and all my guests who joined me on the broadcast today. I thank all of them for their valuable inputs and their thoughts and opinions on the big inauguration ceremony that we saw today at Washington, D.C. In fact, let's also listen in to some of the other excerpts from President Trump's speech.
For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. The United States, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made. And Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
Those were, of course, the highlights from President Trump's speech. On this channel, we'll, of course, be tracking very closely the first few days of his presidency, his second term as the US president. But for the moment, we'll slip into a short break. News and updates will continue right here on NDTV.
Hello, Moto.
Well, I'm in Altadena. This is one of the worst hit areas.
When disaster strikes, NDTV World brings you exclusive on-the-ground reports straight from the heart of the action.
A neighborhood in Los Angeles that has been devastated by fire.
I just received an emergency alert extreme, which has come on my phone.
Stay tuned for NDTV World's in-depth coverage as we bring you the real stories from Los Angeles.
This is the Altadena area, and there are still fires, and there's a lot of smoke in the area. These houses completely gutted.
This is reporting that matters only on NDTV World.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Mahakumbh, a festival of faith. The world's biggest spiritual festival. The divine dip at the spiritual Sangam. A sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
Hello and welcome to the best of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
For 2 decades, NDTV has been a window to the world's greatest thinkers, leaders, Nobel laureates and stars at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
From Bill Gates to Shakira to Randy Zuckerberg to top ministers to what is often the biggest story, India, a global economic powerhouse. Conversations around our greatest challenges from AI to wars to sustainability. Join us, NDTV's Vishnu Shom and me, Neeraj Shah, as we engage with the world's finest. NDTV at Davos from January 20th to January 25th.
All set for Trump 2.0. Countdown to January 20th. Terror shadow, visa wars. All the twists and turns. Tracking Trump takeover. Every day at 10:30 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
Kind attention, please.
Delhi Election Metro 2025 is arriving on people's platform.
Please mind the gap.
BJP or AAP, who will get to the Delhi Secretariat station?
दरवाजे बाईं तरफ खुलेंगे.
Who will Delhi voters open the victory doors for? And who will be shown the
economy? NDTV at Davos 2025. Extensive coverage on the channel. Our top focus. Donald Trump has been sworn in as the 47th U.S. president. His first address was a mix of sharp jibes against former U.S. President Joe Biden and promise of a better America. President Trump hit out at the Biden administration and its handling of the migrant crisis, saying that the country has a crisis of trust in its own government. Donald Trump also listed out a series of executive orders that he's going to sign over the next few hours. He vowed mass deportation of illegal immigrants. He also added that he will send troops to repel troops to the US-Mexico border and stop what he called was an invasion of the country. President Trump also reiterated his plan to change the name of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. In fact, let's listen into some of the highlights from his speech.
The golden age of America begins right now. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. In the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. From now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs.
Yeah, potentially 3 locations for the signing of these orders. Here at the US Capitol, where he still is. He could potentially sign in the coming minutes. And then in front of a crowd of 20,000 supporters at a nearby sports arena where he's due to speak in a couple of hours' time, and then potentially more orders when he gets to the White House this evening. But it does seem as if immigration will be his first target. He mentioned that during his speech, saying that it was very much his plan to declare a national emergency at the southern border. He said it would begin the process of returning millions and millions of illegal immigrants. We are expecting in that order for him to order the US military to the border to secure it and to revoke a number of things that have been in place under the Biden administration, things that will change very rapidly, including ending the practice of catch and release and also reinstating his Remain in Mexico policy, a policy that he had in place during his first presidency, but making it clear that immigration, something he campaigned very hard on during the election, is still his top priority and will be amongst those first orders that he signs within the coming minutes. Now, we're expecting to see Marco Rubio, the incoming Secretary of State, sworn in by the end of the day, but he could be the only cabinet member that Donald Trump has before the end of day one. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, is also up for a vote at some point soon, but that could be pushed into tomorrow. But he will need his cabinet around him. The problem is, in recent years, over the last few administrations, partisan politics has very much slowed up these nominees' appointments, the votes that are needed in the Senate. And therefore, we're seeing Donald Trump, like he did last time round, when he only had 2 cabinet positions filled at the start of his presidency, not having his top team yet assembled. His plan will be, of course, to get the Senate voting as quickly as possible during the course of this week to get those confirmations done. And then he can get about the business of governing the country through those executive orders, which he was outlining in that speech.
And my colleague Vishnu Shom is in Davos and spoke to political analyst Ian Bremmer on what we can expect from Trump's second term as US president.
Well, joining us now to talk us through what the next presidency of the United States might be like, Donald Trump coming into